Title suggestion: the mathematical truth about luck that a Bronze Age prisoner figured out 3,000 years ago. In the year 1050 BC, a man sat in a damp, subterranean dungeon, waiting for his execution. His name was King Wen of Zhou. He had been imprisoned by a tyrant who had already murdered Wen's eldest son and served the boy to him in a ritual meat soup. Most men would have spent their final hours in prayer or in a catatonic state of grief. But King Wen did something that defies modern psychology. He began to draw lines in the dirt. He wasn't drawing maps or writing a confession. He was mapping the underlying binary code of the universe. While his captors celebrated their power, Wen was calculating their inevitable collapse. He realized that the very height of their strength was the exact moment their ruin began. He discovered that luck isn't a random roll of the dice, but a predictable cycle of energy that moves with the precision of a clock. This prisoner wrote a single system of 64 patterns that would later fascinate Carl Jung, influence the discovery of the binary code that runs your smartphone, and provide the exact blueprint for surviving a modern economic collapse. You think you're in control of your career, your investments, and your relationships. But if you don't understand the I Ching, the Book of Changes, you are a sailor trying to navigate an ocean without knowing that tides exist. Today, we decode the strategy of the sage. We look at why your greatest successes often lead to your most painful failures, and how a prisoner 3,000 years ago saw your current dilemma coming from a mile away. To understand the I Ching, you must understand the weight of the world it was born into. This wasn't a book written in a quiet library by a man with a tenure-track position. It was forged in the fire of the Shang dynasty's collapse, a time of human sacrifice, oracle bones, and absolute, terrifying uncertainty. The Shang kings believed they ruled by divine right, and their power was absolute. To challenge them was not just treason, it was a sin against the heavens. King Wen, the founder of the Zhou, sat in the prison of Yoli for 7 years. 7 years in a hole. It was there that he took the 8 basic symbols of nature: heaven, earth, thunder, water, mountain, wind, fire, and lake, and stacked them. He created the 64 hexagrams. He wasn't looking for magic. He was looking for the logic of the change. He realized that change is the only constant in the universe. Everything that goes up must come down. But more importantly, everything that reaches its extreme must turn into its opposite. Think about the modern world. We are obsessed with constant growth. Every CEO, every hustle culture influencer, and every politician promises a line that only goes up. But King Wen would have laughed at that. He would tell you that the line going up is the very thing that guarantees the line will soon go down. Did you know that Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the co-inventor of calculus and the man who gave us the binary system of ones and zeros, only finalized his theory after seeing the I Ching? He realized the ancient Chinese had already mapped the world using the same logic that powers every computer chip on Earth today. This isn't mysticism. This is the original software of reality. When you feel like you are stuck in a standstill, or when you feel like you are crossing the great water, you aren't just experiencing a mood. You are inhabiting a specific hexagram. Most people fail because they use the wrong strategy for the current pattern. They try to act when the hexagram says wait. They try to wait when the hexagram says strike. They are fighting the tide, and the tide always wins. Today, we are going to look at 4 specific teachings from the I Ching that apply directly to your life this week. We are going to bridge the gap between a Bronze Age dungeon and your boardroom, your bedroom, and your bank account. Let us begin with the first teaching. It comes from Hexagram 1, the creative. Specifically, the very first line of the entire Book of Changes. Hidden dragon. Do not act. This sounds simple, doesn't it? Just wait. But in our modern world, hidden dragon, do not act, is the most difficult piece of advice to follow. We are told to build in public, to market ourselves, to get our name out there. We feel that if we aren't visible, we don't exist. But the I Ching warns that every great power begins in a state of invisibility. If a dragon reveals itself before its wings are fully grown, it becomes a target. If it flies too early, it exhausts itself before the real battle begins. Consider the history of the most successful companies in the world. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't launch 20 new products. He cut the product line by 70%. He went into hidden dragon mode. For years, the world wondered what Apple was doing. They were silent. They were hidden. They were perfecting the iPod and the iPhone in total secrecy. They didn't act until the creative energy was so concentrated that its release would be unstoppable. The actionable principle is this: your power grows in the dark. If you have a great idea, or you are starting a new phase of your life, do not seek validation too early. The moment you tell the world your plans, you bleed out the energy required to execute them. Keep the dragon hidden until it is too big for the cave to hold it. Ask yourself, how much of your work is just you performing the idea of work for an audience? If you stop posting about it, would the work get better? The second teaching comes from Hexagram 29, the abysmal. The I Ching says, the abysmal repeated. If you are sincere, you have success in your heart, and whatever you do succeeds. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive line in the book. The abysmal represents water, specifically, water flowing through a dangerous, narrow gorge. In the I Ching, water is the symbol of danger because it is deep and unpredictable. But notice the phrase, the abysmal repeated. This means you are not just in danger. You are in a cycle of recurring crises. One problem after another. Most people, when they face a repeated crisis, panic. They try to climb out of the water. They fight the current. But the sage tells us that the way through the abysmal is to become like the water. Water doesn't try to go around the gorge. It fills the gorge. It stays true to its nature. It doesn't lose its essence just because the path is difficult. Look at a company like Netflix. In 2011, they made a massive mistake with Quickster, splitting their DVD and streaming business. Their stock plummeted 75%. They were in the abysmal. But they didn't panic and try to go back to being a DVD company. They doubled down on their sincerity, their core identity as a content delivery system. They filled the gorge by investing billions into original content like House of Cards. They didn't fight the danger. They used the danger to wash away their old, slower competitors. The actionable principle is, when you are in a crisis, do not focus on the danger. Focus on your sincerity, your core purpose. If the situation is chaotic, the only thing you can control is the integrity of your response. Be like water. Find the lowest point, stay calm, and wait for the level to rise. The third teaching is Hexagram 12, stand still. Evil people do not further the perseverance of the superior man. The great departs, the small arrives. There are times in your life when, no matter what you do, nothing works. Your emails go unanswered. Your investments flatline. Your relationships feel like they are moving through mud. This is what the I Ching calls standstill. It is the moment when heaven and earth are no longer communicating. The biggest mistake people make during a standstill is trying to push through it. They think that if they just work harder or scream louder, they can force the world to move. But the I Ching says that in a standstill, the great departs. The energy of growth has left the building. If you try to build something great during a standstill, you are building on a foundation of air. Consider Kodak. They were in a standstill. The era of film was ending. Instead of recognizing the standstill and retreating to preserve their greatness for a new cycle, they tried to force the old world to keep spinning. They spent billions trying to market film in a digital age. They fought the standstill, and the standstill crushed them. The actionable principle is, when the world says no, listen. A standstill is not a failure, it is a season. Use this time for internal cultivation. Retreat. Simplify. Don't throw great resources after small results. Wait for the cycle to turn, Because just as standstill, hexagram 12, follows peace, hexagram 11, peace must eventually follow standstill. If you are frustrated right now because things are moving slowly, ask yourself, am I trying to plant seeds in the middle of winter? And if I am, why am I surprised they aren't blooming? The final teaching is hexagram 64, before completion. It is the very last hexagram in the book. The little fox has almost completed the crossing. If it gets its tail in the water, there is nothing that would further. Isn't it strange that the Book of Changes ends with a hexagram called before completion? You would expect it to end with the end or success. But the I Ching is a cycle. There is no such thing as a final end. This image of the little fox is one of the most famous in ancient literature. The fox is crossing a frozen river. It is careful. It listens to the ice. It is almost at the other side. But at the very last second, it gets overconfident. It stops paying attention. Its tail dips into the freezing water. The weight of the wet tail pulls the fox back, and it drowns inches from the shore. This is the last mile problem in business and in life. We see it in athletes who celebrate before they cross the finish line and get overtaken. We see it in developers who ship code that is 99% perfect, only for that 1% bug to crash the entire system. We see it in people who almost finish their degree or almost sign the contract, but let their focus slip in the final hour. Look at how SpaceX handles rocket landings. The most dangerous part isn't the launch. It's the final 10 seconds before the booster touches the pad. That is the little fox moment. They don't celebrate when the rocket enters the atmosphere. They don't celebrate when the legs deploy. They only celebrate when the completion is total. The actionable principle is, the danger is greatest at the end. When you think you have won, that is when you must be the most alert. Do not let your tail get wet. Treat the final 1% of any task with more respect than the first 99%. We have traveled from the prisons of the Shang dynasty to the boardrooms of the 21st century. But wisdom is useless if it remains in your head. You must put it into your hands. This week, I challenge you to apply 3 specific strategies from the Oracle. First, the 72-hour observation. Identify the one project or idea you are most excited about, the one you want to tell everyone about. For the next 72 hours, speak of it to no one. Do not post. Do not update. Observe how that silence changes the way you work. Feel the hidden dragon energy building. If you can't stay silent for 3 days, you don't own the idea owns you. Second, the friction audit. Look at your current standstills. Where are you pushing against a door that is clearly locked? List 3 areas where you are experiencing recurring friction. This week, stop pushing. Withdraw your energy from those 3 things and redirect it toward internal cultivation, learning a new skill, refining your health, or simplifying your environment. Watch what happens to the locked doors when you stop trying to kick them down. Third, the fox's focus. Identify a project that is 90% finished. The boring part, the administrative cleanup, the final formatting, the follow-up email. This week, treat that 10% as if it were the most important work of your life. Do not let your tail get wet by rushing to the next new thing. Finish with the intensity of a master. Kingwin did not survive the dungeon of Yoli because he was a positive thinker. He survived because he was a logical observer. He realized that the tyrant who imprisoned him was just a part of a cycle, and that cycles always move. He didn't have to fight the tyrant. He just had to outlast the tyrant's season. You are currently living in a cycle. You might be in the creative, the abysmal, the standstill, or the moment before completion. Your job is not to change the season. Your job is to know what season it is and to act accordingly. The world will tell you that luck is a mystery. The I Ching tells you that luck is simply the alignment of your will with the direction of the wind. Remember the prisoner in the dirt. He saw the binary code of the universe 3,000 years before we built a machine to read it. If you want to master the future, you must first master the change. If you found this transmission valuable, the link to our Art of War playbook is below. It is the bridge between this philosophy and your daily strategy. In our next episode, we will go deeper into the abysmal and look at the strategy of the dark night of the soul. Subscribe if you are ready to stop fighting the tide and start becoming the ocean. But only if you are ready to listen. The oracle is always speaking. The question is, are you quiet enough to hear it? The only thing that never changes is the law of change itself.